Military Academy looking at multiple sections of an introductory economics class, that the classes in which laptops were permitted, everybody scored lower than in the classes. On average, those classes scored lower than the classrooms in which the laptops were not. Okay, so this is just another graph showing the same thing, where students could view, like these groups, this group of students here, where they could view a student multitasking. You see their performance compared to students who couldn't view multitasking. Obviously, better not to have to look at somebody else's screen or have it there as a distraction. This one is really interesting. Again, we're talking about class averages. This is on test material. In classrooms where devices were not allowed versus where they were, when the test was given right after the lecture, there's actually no difference. It looks like even the people who use the laptop did a little better. But actually, that's not enough difference to matter. Okay. But look what happens later on. Look what happens on the unit exam 3 or 4 weeks later. And even more on the final exam. So, now remember, this is just on this material. Now, what this tells me takes us back over here. All of the stuff in the lecture is here. It goes through your attention, working memory, into long-term memory. Now, this right here, we might have caught it somewhere in here. So the person might still have some remnants of that information in their working memory, because they did the test right away. But what this tells me right here is that in the classrooms where devices were being used, that material never made it to long-term memory. And when you try to remember it on the exam, you'll be really frustrated because you will remember that you saw it, but you won't remember it. Okay? You know that feeling that I've seen this before, but I have no idea what the answer is? That's what's probably going to happen. So, let's conclude this section by talking about shoulder surfing. It's a phenomenon that's been observed. You can see it in any social setting, coffee shop, on the train, airplane, classroom. Screens are distracting, and people who are around are affected by them. You all didn't grow up in this day, but there was a time when people could smoke cigarettes anytime, anywhere. Okay? And if you went to a restaurant and the people on the table next to you were smoking, then that was just too bad. If you didn't like it, see if they would move you. But it soon became clear that breathing somebody else's smoke was also bad for your health. And so restaurants started doing a thing that was really interesting. When you went to the maitre d', when you went to get a table, they would say, would you like the smoking or the non-smoking section? And you could go to a smoking or non. If you've traveled much in other parts of the world, you can still see this phenomenon. Of course, now there's no smoking anytime, where. But people using laptops in class affects other people in class like secondhand smoke affects people in a restaurant. It's not your smoke, but it's affecting your life. And so you have something to say about it. Okay? And as a professor, I have a lot to say about it because it's my job to make sure that everybody has the best possible learning environment. Okay? So if I tell you in my class, put away the laptop, you may feel offended, but I'm going to take care of what's best for the class. Okay, so let's look at the social interaction. There's two studies. I'll let you read that. Have you seen that? Yep. I used to go into a class and it would take me 5 minutes to get everybody quiet down. It was great. It was great. I don't do that anymore. Why do I not do that anymore? Because nobody's talking. Everybody's looking at the device. And it takes me a while to get that worked out. But you walk into a classroom these days and it's just dead silent with people looking at devices. It's really creepy. It's just scary. The people are that involved in that device. Here's another quote. So, thinking about this from the perspective of classroom being a learning community, not just a place where a bunch of individuals go to look up when the teacher says something that might be relevant to them. There's a couple of studies. One study shows, actually I'm just talking about one so we can move on, but this study shows that if you are in a conversation and there is a phone on the desk, that's one condition. And then another condition is there's a phone on the desk but it's turned over. And then the third condition is there's no phone. Those three conditions will affect the conversation dramatically. That the quality of the conversation, when there's a phone open like this on the desk, is significantly more poor. Okay, English professor. Poorer and more poor. Can I get by with either one?
Poor.
Poor. Then the device turned over. But there's actually not much difference between the two. The only real difference is between a phone on the table and not. Now, I've talked to students about this in the past, and they've said, well, it's not a big deal between us because we're good friends and, you know, it's fine, it's not rude, et cetera, et cetera. Well, whatever. But this research is really interesting because it shows two other things. It shows that the more significant the conversation, that is, the more serious it is, on some continuum between trivial and about something important, the more important the conversation is, the worse the effect of the phones. But as for whether it matters or not between people who know each other, actually it's quite interesting. Because the better the people knew each other, the worse the effect of the phone was. Now, I can't explain to you exactly why that is. I have some ideas about it. But the idea that, well, we just all do it and it's all okay, it still profoundly affects the quality of conversation. Let me see what's next here. Yeah, so we'll get there in a minute. So why am I concerned about this in a classroom? Have you all heard anybody use the notion of flipped classroom? Does that trickle down? The idea is you read all the stuff and you watch all the videos, and when you come to class you talk about it. You actually interact about it. You do projects with it. You have activities and so on that you do with it. It's a thing that faculty are quite interested in. For example, in my classes, my undergraduate, well, all my classes actually, you have stuff to read and maybe a video to watch or something like that. And then we come to class and I'm going to put you in a group of 4 or 5 with some very specific structured interaction to have on meaningful things. Okay, and I have a couple classes where that's really important. I teach a class called Peacemaking. And I teach a class called Sexual Minorities, Identities, and Communities. In both of those classes, the kind of conversation and discussion that we have can be pretty serious. It can be real stuff. So, why would I be concerned about all these devices lying around? because they specifically affect the quality of interaction in those groups. Okay. One way is just this distraction, the study I just showed you. But another way, and I don't have a specific study here, but just a lot of observation. What I find is that quote that we just looked at, this one, actually this one too. So I put a group of students in a group of 4, I give them stuff to do, but they have phones, and the phones are out. What I notice is they finish the project much more quickly, and then the phones come out. It's like they get through it as quickly as they can so they can look at the phone. Which of course seriously affects the quality of their work, seriously affects the interaction that's going on among them, and the learning that's taking place in the process. Okay. And so the rule I have in my classes now because of this is that when I put you in a group, all devices go up, away, in something, until I say we're finished. So if this group here finishes, you still don't pull out your phone. You know the most amazing thing happens?